It's the first show of 2025. Super pumped about it. I even trekked into my office here in the midst of a snowstorm, which snowstorm, it's a relative term. For those of you that live in the Midwest and in some areas that get snow often, 8 inches is probably nothing. But if you live in the DC metro, it is a showstopper. So I'm here with someone I'm getting to know, very, very well respected in the industry, has been a part of building 3 banks that were acquired. His company is very well known, Terra Verde, and he's a genius as far as I'm concerned. Jim Deitch joins me now here on 101, and this is the first show of the year. And I really enjoyed the conversation I had with you, Jim, about a month and a half ago. It was really the first time, believe it or not, that we got to know each other, although you're someone I've known of for a very long time. I first really got to know how you view things through an interview with my good friend Dave Savage that he termed Moneyball. And the idea was all about the fact that a lot of mortgage companies focus, really all mortgage companies for the most part, focus so much on how much are my loan officers doing and not enough, if at all, on are they profitable. I found that interview to be so fascinating, and it's a real honor to sit with you today. How are you?
Greg, I am very well and really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you. And it is my first discussion of the new year. So Happy New Year.
Oh, let's go. Yeah, same to you. I'm super excited. You're on the West Coast? The East
I'm
Coast?
in Naples,
You're in
Florida.
Naples. Okay.
East
All right.
Coast. There's no snow here today. It's
Well, that's good. Well, you're in Naples. Well, what
Yeah.
do you expect? Well, we have so much ground to cover here. Where do we begin? I'll give it to you.
Well, I appreciate that. When we got talking about a month and a half ago, I was really impressed with your background and your story, and in particular the interest in sports and how you spent the early part of your career in the sports side of things. And it's fitting then that we're talking a little bit about Moneyball Mortgage. And if you'd like, I'd like to take that discussion I had with Savage and maybe expand it a little bit, particularly since your knowledge of baseball and your knowledge of the personalities is such that maybe just spend a few minutes on that.
Yeah, has it ever been more important? I mean, how timely was that? I don't know exactly when you did it, but I think it was somewhere it was in 23.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the companies were in the midst of consecutive quarters of losing money. So it was so germane to the moment in time, and based on depending on how you feel about rate compression, and I think it's here to stay. I think brokers are here to stay. In the past, it's always been this pendulum that swung. Hey, brokers are in vogue, and then lenders are in vogue, but now I think technology, which we'll get a lot into today. You are a fintech leader and expert, so we'll talk about AI and how you believe that's going to impact the industry. But it's very relevant, right? How are companies keeping an eye on expenses as we head into 2025 and beyond? So yeah, please dig into that.
Yeah. So it came out of a conversation that started in 2013, right after the movie Moneyball was released. And Billy Beane was out at an MBA conference, and there was a table sitting in the very front next to Dave Stevens for lunch after Billy had spoken. And there's an empty seat. So not being shy, I just walked up and sat down. And someone next to me said, "That seat's reserved." I said, "Well, yeah, it is. And I'm here. So here we go." So I spent an hour talking to Billy, and he knew enough about the mortgage business to say, here's what I really see about your business. You pay way too much for far too little. I said, "Well, tell me more." He says, "Well, here's what our system is. We track the productivity of our Major League Baseball players, and we bring people up from the minors, and we measure how well they do based upon how much we pay them. And our whole thesis is we're a small market team, and we can't compete against Boston or New York or Los Angeles in terms of what we pay people, but we can compete on how we think and how we apply the idea of whether a player is overvalued or undervalued." And for those of you that read the book or seen the movie, it's pretty common sense. It's gotten far more evolved. So I was in Texas and had a chance to sit down with Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball, among other, including The Big Short. And I said, why did you pick Billy Beane and how did you come up with this idea? And Lewis said, I always look at perplexing questions about, are markets efficient? Are businesses really making sense? And Major League Baseball has a very high labor component, very high spend, and a lot of teams that spend a lot of money don't necessarily win a lot of games. I mean, you're from the Baltimore, Washington area. You know that's the legacy of the Orioles for a while, right?
Yeah.
Spend a lot of money, but not win a lot. So it really intrigued me, and I did some analysis, and it turns out that the Oakland A's were winning games for about 25% of what it cost Boston or New York or other major market teams to win. So when I wrote the second book, I went back to Billy and said, would you mind talking to me about this? And that's really where the whole concept of Moneyball came in. So I'll stop there and say, love your insights on the sports side of it. Love your insights on the Orioles. Love your insights. And we can develop this just a little bit more after that.
Yeah. So your takeaway regarding companies' lack of focus on individual LOs profitability fascinates me because it's true. We have top producer trips. We take the top this amount of people to some faraway, beautiful place. But are we taking the right people? You know, you take a $50 million a year producer who may make the company less than an $18 million a year producer. Do you think that companies will ever get away from that mindset where they're just looking at the top line numbers and not peeling back on the profitability piece? Is there a solve for that?
I think there's a solve for that. I don't know if we'll ever get completely away from it, Greg. But here's the thing that, as a lender in the banks you mentioned that I started, we ended up creating a platform that at one point had the highest return on assets for the size of our organization, and we did it by focusing on the contribution of where the right blend of production and cost and customer service was. And we found that if we looked at a particular band of loan officers, those were our sweet spot. We recruited them, we worked with them, we got them onto our platform, we incented them. And as a result, we knew that that band of loan officers and the characteristics they exhibited really fit our sweet spot. And as a result, we were able to get 100 basis points or more of profit on origination out of that particular sweet spot. And we just did it over and over and over again, which made obviously the companies attractive to be purchased. But I don't know that we really think that way. And I've asked probably 300 C-level people, tell me about your top producers. And every one of them talks about volume. I said, well, tell me what they actually contributed to the bottom line. And you get this blank stare of something like, I'll get back to you or whatever. And it just goes to, I asked Billy Beane in 2019, how do you rate and how do you work with your people that come up through spring training, and how do you decide who stays and who doesn't? And he went through the process and said, we're looking for discipline. We're looking for people that play the odds. We're looking for people that fit within our system. And he told me a story about, spring training. First people come up, they'll essentially be told, take the first pitch. The pitcher in spring training will give them a ball that's just irresistible. It's right waiting to be swatted, and they'll swat it on the first pitch. They'll go around and come back into the dugout and get reamed about, we told you to take. And they'll go, no, I'm a hitter. I do it my way. It's my system, man. I'm really here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it my way. I'm a hitter. I'm a hitter. I'm a hitter. And Beane said, what happens is there's no discipline because they don't understand the advantage of playing our way of doing things to get the statistics to work for us.
This has always been a problem
right.
since the beginning of time, and it has been exacerbated by signing bonuses. There's no question. Like the control has been given to the originator in unfathomable ways.
And you know what? A great originator is worth it. It's just, what's a great originator? And that's the question that I
I
keep
know
thinking.
I know of someone that closed $137 million at their lender in 2024 that just got $1.5 million with a 3-year clawback. That's over 100 basis points. Is there any scenario where that's worth it?
You know, Greg, it would be hard in this environment to say that there's any situation where it's worth it. There may be some,
Yeah,
but it also depends on what's sitting on top of that originator in terms of other costs that are attributable to
sure.
that
Of
originator.
course, yeah. I mean, leases, things like that, and expenses and big teams, which to close a lot of loans, it takes big teams. I want to shift here. I could talk to you about this topic forever, but you have some very poignant thoughts on AI and how it's going to impact this industry. Give us some of that. I mean, what is the mortgage business going to look like in 3, 5, 8 years?
Well, I think the question is a great one, Greg, and it really goes into the ability to take advantage of technology, and to do that, you really have to be willing to be flexible to say, I may be doing it this way today, but I'm going to use AI or any other process-based system to make me more efficient, which means ultimately adopting a system that works in a way that one conforms to get the system to do its best. And that has been the bane. That has been the most difficult thing, I think, in our industry, because everybody wants to do it their way. I have my system. I'm going to do it my way. I'm an originator. I'm going to do it my way. I'm a processor. I'm going to do it my way. I'm an underwriter. I always put these conditions on. And AI really allows you to get to the essence of what's necessary to get a transaction done and get it sold and keep it sold. But that means that the amount of effort and training that goes into that AI is super important. And you have to change your business process. You cannot use AI and then ignore the recommendations and go do what you want to do anyway. We've looked at some clients that have used some form of AI in underwriting, and we compared the costs before and the costs after. What do you think happened to costs of underwriting after the implementation of AI? For the most part,
I'm hoping it went down.
it did not go down very much, and the reason was that you can put AI into underwriting, but you can't take the underwriter out of AI. They don't trust it, and as a result, will oftentimes work around it, which belies the benefit for it.
Jim, are there mortgage companies out there right now that are using AI effectively, that are really moving the needle?
Yeah, there are people that are really moving the needle,
Who are
and
they?
they're
I mean,
using.
I don't think a company would mind being applauded, right? And obviously, anyone that works at these companies know. I hear about Angel AI. I hear that Rate, Victor's company, that they're underwriting with some AI. Are there any others out there that are leading the way?
I think there's a large number of people that are experimenting with Greg, and for confidentiality, I even the ones that are doing great, I hesitate to name publicly. But I will say this: the dispersion between the cost to underwrite or the cost to do a file, from the middle to the very best to the very worst, it's widening. And it's hard to believe, but I've seen numbers where cost to originate is $20,000 a loan. You're not making any money at $20,000 a loan, but ultimately that's what it costs to originate. I've
But you've
also
seen some
seen
numbers as low as what? What's the other side of that coin? You've seen it
the
as
other
high as
side.
20, but as low as what?
The other side of it, using similar volume of the MBA, so average loan size in the, call it the 350 range. Seen it as low as 7,000, a little bit below that. Sometimes 5,500, but the dispersion is really wide. And I think that's what's really troubling to our industry is we don't know how to ultimately get the whole industry closer to the middle.
Yeah. Do you
And
so I have this viewpoint that we have the old guard. We have so many CEOs who have been wildly successful in the mortgage business that are just sitting in this level, living well, high off the hog for doing amazing things, right?
right,
But I feel like over time they're going to get, they're either going to fold up, get acquired, say goodbye, whatever it is. So I think I don't think I know this has been storied, right? There are always these companies that are bubbling up that understand how to use technology, that understand how to reach the consumer, how to talk the consumer's language. And at no point in time has there ever been more opportunity. Has the ground been more fertile for this kind of an uprising? And so I have two questions. Number one, do you agree that the way the winners win in 5 years is going to look wholly different than it looks right now? And then number two, because we're talking about a lot of technology, are we going to lose mortgage acumen in that transition? In other words, are we going to have people coming in that just know technology so well, and then mortgages become systematized, right? And we lose that element of connectivity that has made all of us fall in love with the business. So a two-part question.
answer the first part is question number one is most definitely this industry has got to get its handle around the cost to originate. If you think about that 12 or 13,000 or whatever your number is, think about the corollary to that. There are people doing home equity loans that have almost fully automated the process, and you can originate a home equity loan for about 65 basis points.
And in about 30 seconds, too.
And in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And think about it, that same asset that you're making a second lien position on, because I ask CEOs this all the time, you're willing to spend 60 basis points on that asset, do it in 30 seconds, take a second lien position with no title insurance. And that's perfectly fine. Those assets perform. And there's no way in the world you're ever going to buy out a first mortgage to protect a second mortgage. It's just the economics don't work. So for all intents and purposes, this is an unsecured loan. But to make a first mortgage, you're going to spend 400 basis points. You're going to put the borrower through the ringer for 30 days. You're going to ask for all kinds of information, some of which may be relevant and some is just meeting the secondary market guidelines. It just doesn't make any sense. The question I see coming on what's going to change this industry is first, will Freddie and Fannie ever get out of government control? And if your thought on that is no, never, we're probably going to see a slower move towards a completely different way of thinking. But to the extent that,
well, what's your opinion on that? I can't let you off the hook there. I think they're coming out.
Yes, I think they're coming out. Yes.
All right, cool. I wanted to check that box, right? I want everybody to know where we think. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but in 2 years, 3 years, could it happen? Yeah.
Yeah, and the time is ripe to do it for all kinds of reasons, which we can talk about in a different time. But I think getting them out of conservatorship would be good for the economy, good for the government, good for lending.
Well, I mean, the danger is that you put someone in control of our business, FHFA director, who can add LLPAs or, refi fees. Like, that wouldn't happen if it was out of conservatorship. We can't have, and David Stevens wrote an opinion on this that I dusted off over the weekend, which I really appreciated because for the longest time, he wanted it to stay in. But then he started to see some of these changes come in, and the fact that one person essentially can materially impact us and the business and tweak and tinker to their desire, oftentimes motivated by political reasons and forces. Like, we cannot be a pawn like that. So I'm starting to shift my viewpoint here.
I think they have to come out. It won't be next month, next year, but ultimately, it just doesn't make sense to keep them in because we've stifled innovation. So
the second part of my question. I know I'm moving fast on you because it's not an hour talk, and I know you have so much to give. So I don't want to miss the opportunity to cover some bases with you. So forgive me
No, that's great.
Yeah, forgive me. The second part of the question was, because technology is going to be integrated in such a big way, are we going to lose some mortgage acumen potentially? You'll just have people coming in that understand business and understand how to move the widgets, which will drive down the cost to produce. But we could potentially lose that connectivity. Do you see a world where that happens?
I think the thing that technology cannot replace is empathy and trust. And on a major transaction, such as a mortgage or buying a house, the need to get advice you trust is just so important. It goes back to an analog in the airline industry. Uh, the airlines are now highly automated. The pilots don't spend a lot of time doing the basics of flying. It's done by a machine. They do spend a lot of time managing risk. They spend a lot of time managing, believe it or not, on-time performance, and they spend a lot of time on safety. And
Please send JetBlue that memo.
yes,
They just got a fine, right, for
yeah,
being the tardiest airline. I like JetBlue personally. Love
yeah,
JetBlue.
yeah, and like many
For what it's
things,
worth.
the speed through the airway system is controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration, who is woefully short on controllers. And most of the delays, believe it or not, are not airline induced; they're air traffic control induced. So another case of the federal government managing something that just, you would think by now we'd realize we need more controllers, but we don't have them. And again, a different discussion. But getting back to your question, the trust you place on a major transaction to an originator or a realtor that is well versed and very knowledgeable in the process is irreplaceable. All the things that happen in the transaction to get there are easily replaced by technology. So that point of impact of creating that trust, being able to structure, being able to provide good advice, being able to talk to a consumer about, yeah, rates are 7.5, but guess what? If you look at a chart, you'll get a chance to refi out of this at some point in the next 3 or 4 years. What you won't get a chance to do is not make the landlord richer building his net worth. You'll be building your net worth, because the fact of the matter is, and it's been true since the founding of our country, home ownership has been a way to accumulate substantial net worth, net equity. And it comprises, believe it or not, people who are homeowners and have been homeowners 10 years or longer have almost 20 times the net worth of renters. And you think, wow, that doesn't make any sense. It's true. So that advice, regardless of rates, regardless of elements, the back office, the AI, the technology, the business process really has to make the process easy, driving towards the simplicity of a home equity loan. But it means we're going to have to rethink processes and rethink the amount of labor that goes into this. 40% of the cost to originate is touch labor with operational people. And if you do a home equity, 0% of the labor is touch labor to do a home equity loan. So that's where the opportunity is. It's not necessarily on the LO or origination side. It's in the backside. And that's where I think the promise of technology to substantially reduce the cost is there.
What's the biggest threat to the industry right now? Doesn't have to be a singular threat. What are some things that keep you up at night? I know how deeply you care about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this almost 40 years, and I love the industry and love what it's done. And the very first company we started, we had a mission that came from actually one of our frontline people. It said, why don't we make a mission of buy, afford, enjoy the home of their dreams, help a consumer buy, afford, enjoy the home of their dreams. That's a great mission. So that's been part of my DNA for so long. The threats to the industry are really threefold. The first is the regulatory threat, the compliance threat, constantly is over us. We're in a great period of time right now with foreclosure and loss mit. Anytime that number starts to tick up, expect regulatory intervention. I don't know what the new administration will do in reining in the CFPB, but that is another threat of enforcement-driven compliance is not a good thing for the industry. But the fundamental threat is that the origination business has not been profitable for the last 2.5 years. And ultimately, capital goes to where the profit is. And we've got to find a way to increase the returns that come out of originating a mortgage. And the only way I know to do that is to substantially reduce the cost. You can't change interest rates, they're out of your control. You can't change available inventory, that's out of your control. 100% in your control is how much it costs you to do a loan. And
And
we
what
are
percentage of that thesis has LO component in your mind?
LO comp for a good loan officer. And a good loan officer is their commission is and what they are earning is without concessions, without all the cleanup that goes for a file that's not well constructed. So I have no difficulty with a loan officer earning the commission as long as there's no concessions on the pricing and the file is originated and flows through the system easily. Most of the place where I think the opportunity lies is in the operational side. We are hugely inefficient. Give you an example. In 2003, an underwriter underwrote 115 files a month. Today, we underwrite 25 or 30 or 35 and think it's great. We ought to be doing far, far more than that. And until we get that calculus changed and get that 45% of touch labor on the operational side out of the business and into streamlining, we're going to continue to struggle.
Great answers. Thank you for letting me put you on the spot like that.
No worries.
So, when you've been a part of growing 3 companies, you love, and they were all acquired. You know the business really well. You've got a very clear vision on AI and technology and where the business is going. So the question I have for you is, will you ever get back into the origination side of the game? You've been in the business 40 years. You're a competitor, obviously, and you know the space super well. So if you really feel like this is a great opportunity and moment in time, could we see Jim Deitch getting back into the origination game?
You probably can, and I haven't told anybody other than 2 of my closest advisors and friends that. But I think the opportunity to rethink how we're helping, particularly first-time home buyers, and how we are working to take the cost out of the origination process opens up an opportunity in the capital markets that I'm in the early stages of exploring. But it's as you said, once you have a taste of this business, it's really hard not to get back into it. So
I think this is breaking news.
this is probably breaking news.
Yeah, well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Love to see you back in the game. That's extraordinary. I don't even know what to say. Normally, my friends at Housing Wire are listening. So if you get a call from my friend James Kleiman, who's on paternity leave, it doesn't stop him from working, though. The guy's one of the hardest working guys around. Any closing thoughts, Jim?
Greg, I think the discussion that you and others are having about the structure of this business is super healthy. We're in a point where $1.5 trillion, $1.6 trillion, $1.7 trillion of purchase business is likely to be the level that we'll be looking at the next 2-3 years. So we've got to scale our business to fit within that. I am not optimistic that we're going to see large amounts of refinances come, simply because the pressure on interest rates and the pressure on the federal government to finance its deficits is just too high. So if we focus on just creating that trust with customers, we focus on really taking the cost out, that's where I'd spend my time. And I think your efforts on that, some of the people that you've had on your show and others have really gravitated to that. So I'm pretty anxious and happy to say I think this industry will figure it out. And keep in mind that trust and that empathy cannot be replaced by technology. That's the value of what we bring, and that's what makes me get up every morning, is how can we help people buy, afford, enjoy that home of their dreams, and do so in a way that is fairly compensating all people in the transaction and giving the consumer the best possible deal they can get.
Yeah, well, you're taking this down the road. Before I let you go, I do have to ask you about first-time home buyers, because the underserved communities, they're really, really hurting. It's never been harder. Affordability has never been worse. How do we solve that riddle? What do you see? What can we do? Does that have to be a government thing? Is it a mortgage company thing?
I think it's a capital markets question that needs to be resolved, because the Freddie Fannie in particular, the limitations on how one thinks about what is creditworthy and isn't creditworthy is just not working in this environment. It's hard to have one or two people who are first timers stand on their own and just make it work. We just don't have the right elements. DPA is one element, gift is another element, but there's got to be some other things out there. And that's one of my areas of focus. I'm really thinking about how can I really assist in that process.
Oh, or another hint. Another hint. It's like this is like a game of Clue talking to you. Jim, I'm so happy to know you, and I look forward to continuing to build this relationship. Thank you for joining me here on One on One.
Hey, Greg, thank you so much. Appreciate it so much. And again, thanks for having me. Take care.
Yeah, don't hang up yet, because when we get off, your part of this has to upload or whatever. Donna Chichevsky's back there mining all the controls. She's amazing, the best of the best. One of my biggest gifts in 2024. Next Monday, speaking of Housing Wire and my friends over there, Diego Sanchez, the president of Housing Wire, is going to join us. We are going to cover an awful lot of ground. So I'm looking forward to that too. Until then, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Happy New Year.